Hello everybody, Ziona back again with another Warcraft Rumble PvP oriented video. Today we're going to do something a little different. I figured I'd put together a little tier list here, since everybody loves tier lists nowadays, just to show off the PvP ranking of heroes and their affiliated decks in Warcraft Rumble in the current meta, and how things are looking so far, as the game is quite new, but it's still good to know who you should be aiming for, what you want to play, and who just seems overall fantastic. It's going to be probably a long video. There's a lot of discussion here. I believe there's like 13 heroes in the game right now. Bound to be a lot more. So it is going to be a long one. Buckle up. You guys are in for a treat. It should hopefully be educational and interested. That's my plan, at least. I just wanted to spice it up rather than just a bunch of deck list videos. Putting a lot of work into this one, so if you guys would do me the favor of, commenting, telling me what you think, liking, all that crazy weird YouTube stuff, and we're going to get right into it in no particular order here. We've got our first up here. I'm just going to chuck him in the bottom for now. He's not remotely dumpster fire. But, sorry, I'm doing everything on mobile. My computer's a piece of crap, so any recording on the computer is just going to come out awful. So we're going to make do with a mobile tier maker here. First up, we've got Blood Mage Thalnos. He's a 4-drop card. His ability is every time you cast a spell, it's gonna level him up, increase his attack and HP. He's like an infinitely scaling splash damage mage. He costs 4, so he's mid-tier expensive, but what you can get him, I'd say his initial cost is a little high, but as he scales, I mean, that 4-drop is very valuable. So he's got that cheap free scaling. He's pretty limited to the decks that he can play, unfortunately. It's always big boy in the front, protect the Thalnos kind of thing. Level him up with some spell cycle. Fortunately, even though he is mushed into one reasonable deck, it is one of the stronger decks in PvP currently. It is quite a handful to deal with. It can be dealt with, but the unfortunate thing is he forces you to build the deck around him rather than, having him play into a deck. It's all about him. It's all about keeping him alive, and there is ways to deal with him. And he's kind of like your go-to win condition with the deck. All around, solid hero. Don't be upset if you get him. I like him a lot. He's actually one of my favorite heroes, so it's unfortunate that he's not in the S tier. Spoiler alert. He is hands down my favorite deck to play. He's a lot of fun and very strong, but I can't let that get in the way of my better judgment. Blood Mage Thalnos is going to have to unfortunately go into the acceptable tier. He can be played. He's not spectacular. He's kind of middle of the pack. Good hero, really cool, and he's a skeleton man. I mean, come on, who doesn't like the skeleton man? Coming up next, we've got Cairn Bloodhoof. I'm just chucking them all in the bottom for now as we sort them out. Cairn Bloodhoof is a 5-drop. He's quite expensive, but he's a frontline tank, so reasonably expensive. He's all about that, AoE CC stun onto ground units. He's really, really good defensively. He gives all of your horde cards a 20% buff to their HP, which is really useful. It makes horde cards a lot beefier, but then as such, he's limited to horde-oriented builds. He almost has to take horde cards when you're playing him. So he's limited to the decks that he can play. He plays, there's only realistically 2 decks. There's Bloodlust CC, and then there's Skeleton Cairn. And that's really all you can play with him. He's okay. he's not bad. He's certainly worse than Thalnos. He has not the best win rate in the game. So unfortunately, he's going to go into below average. But really cool card. I can see when some minis come out in the future that better suit him. Maybe some more Horde cards that he'll really pick it up. Horde's minis are great. Horde's heroes are kind of, not fantastic. But, you know, it's Horde. Alliance for the win, right? So coming up next, it looks like we've got Baron Rivendare. Baron Rivendare he's a very good card, to be honest. He's pretty beefy. He costs 4. And he's armored, right? Like, he's an armored charge unit. He takes positive trades because he's going to do that charge. He runs really fast. He does solid damage. And the really cool thing about the card itself is he's an armored card, but he does elemental damage, which not a lot of people know. So he actually can be paired up pretty well in elemental heavy decks. But for the most part, you're seeing him with, you know, control variants and swarm variants, mostly skeletons, because one of his hero abilities is he spawns a bunch of skeletons off of your towers. So the more towers you have, the more skeletons you got. And the skeletons are a pain in the ass. I'm going to be honest. I get other Baron Rivendares, ones who do play, try to connect a tower and stuff like that, like the ones I like to play, have a hard time into other Barons because you can't really get tower with all those skeletons. You don't have to worry about picking up your chests. So, I mean, all around, good card. Nothing crazy fancy about him. His decks are great because a lot of the undead cards that he ends up taking are phenomenal. So yeah, Baron Rivendare is in the meta right now. A lot of people, you'll see him a lot in PvP. He is certainly a meta pick, and nothing wrong with playing yourself Baron Rivendare decks and getting good with them. You're not going to regret it. Coming up next here, we have General Drakkisath. General Drakkisath, he costs 5. His ability is he makes... Ooh, sorry, I got heartburn from all the Red Bulls today. His ability is he makes the opponents take an extra 50% elemental damage, which is huge. Basically, you're doing an extra, almost like double damage, not quite, but you're doing like 1.5 the damage with elemental units. So obviously, you're going to want to build them with elemental decks. Fortunately, BlackRock has a lot of powerful splash elemental cards in Flamewaker, in Drake. He's just fantastic. He's a 5-drop. He's crazy tanky. He takes less elemental damage himself. He takes like 50% less damage from elemental. So he's like actually extremely tanky, good into mages. So he's that beefy frontline tank. You make your opponent vulnerable to your deck, which is huge. He's got a ton of build opportunities. You can play numerous styles of his deck. They all, sorry, I'm letting my screen die out here. It's low battery mode. Anyways, sorry. There's a lot of build opportunities with him. He's just really good. All around fantastic card. One of the strongest in the meta right now. And very deserving of our very first S tier. General Drakkisath is fantastic. Later in higher elo, you'll come to understand how genuinely strong this card is. And you won't regret learning him, picking him up, playing his deck, and it's not even that hard. That's the best part. So who do we got next? We got Mr. Grom Hellscream, the old orky boy. He's a 4-drop card. He's only realistically viable in 2 decks, and that's Bruiser Bloodlust and Horde Beast Bloodlust, where you throw in a couple of beast cards. His talents, his talents are pretty mediocre, to be honest. For a hero card, his talents are pretty not that cool. Doesn't really change how he plays at all. There's just kind of like buffs to who he is as a card, which isn't inherently bad, but it's not great, like, compared to some of the other talents. Like, you've got, what's his name, Rend Blackhand, who's got the bonus armor and elemental resist and stuff. Like, those really game-changing talents he lacks, which is unfortunate, because he's a pretty cool card, and I'm glad to see him in the game. But, honestly, he builds very similar decks to Cairn. He's pretty limited into playing certain decks, mostly Horde cards, Horde Beast, stuff like that. Just like Cairn, but he's just worse than Cairn. He is another below average. We'll put him below Cairn here, because he's literally Cairn, but no CC and not as good. So, and for a 4-drop, he's kind of meh. There's a lot of other 4-drop cards that are stronger than him. Like, Mini's stronger than him as a hero, which is saying something. Like, I prefer, like, the Ogre Mage. Like, Ogre Mage, he's a 5 cost, but in my opinion, he's a better card than Grom Hellscream, even. Pretty sad to see him in this state, but, you know, below average does not mean that you can't play the deck. It's just going to be harder to push serious competitive trophies. Like, all of these decks are viable in PvP, in my opinion, aside from Dumpster Fire. So don't feel bad if he's your favorite character, you want to play him. Go for it, you know. It's all about having fun. But if you want to be really PvP viable, you want to be the best of the best, he's not really going to do it for you, unfortunately. Next up, we've got a crowd favorite in Hogger. A lot of people like this card. Let's put him in the bottom here. He is a 4-drop, so, you know, middle of the pack cost, not too bad. His early game is atrociously bad. The card for a 4-drop at the start of the game is terrible. It feels bad to put him out because, like, he's basically a waste of 4 gold because he doesn't even feel like he's worth that 4 gold. But, obviously, based on his hero power, he scales up every time you play him. And he becomes this unstoppable monster in the late game who just is such a pain in the butt to deal with. Like, he has one of, if not the strongest late games of any hero card in the game. I wouldn't say the strongest, but, I mean, he's up there. Like, up there with Tirion even, stuff like that. He's unfortunately forced to play cycle decks because you want to throw out as many Hoggers as you can in a game. So he's kind of limited in his build options in terms that he has to play cycle. But he can play many variations of cycle. So you're not limited to the minis you can use. They just have to be cheap. So there is a lot of options with him. But you have to really like that cycle playstyle to play him, you know. He gets absolutely dumpstered by Sneed, unfortunately. Sneed all in smokes this guy. And Sneed does that to a lot of these slower start decks. Sneed's one of those bully toxic nonsense decks. And Hogger isn't immune to that. Hogger decks notoriously lose to Sneed decks. But overall, Hogger is fantastic. Bad early game, but his late game, if he can make it there with defensive cards, fast cycling, and good play, he's fantastic. So Hogger is actually going to slip up into meta. In my opinion, it's a great deck to play. And if you like that cycle play style, you're going to have fun. And you're probably going to be pretty successful. I don't feel bad seeing him in the meta right now. What do we got next? We got this ridiculous pig witch Charlga Razorflank. I don't have this card unlocked, but I obviously know what it does. I've played it, you know, in PvE content. I've got a good understanding with all my research. This is one of the few heroes I don't have yet. And honestly, I don't care. I don't care that I don't have her. She's atrocious. This card is a 2-drop, which is exceptionally cheap. But that comes with a caveat. She does root, so she's good into ground-based units. And she does like like a sucky ability, if that makes sense. She does HP % damage over time while rooting her target in place, so she obliterates frontline tanks. Like, but that's really all she's good for, is killing tanks. Her attacks also like will disable towers. Not a lot of people know that, so she'll make the towers stop shooting you. And through talents, you can actually make her unbound. So you can actually play unbound Charlga and get her to stop towers from shooting your cards and stuff like that. But realistically, she has to play with beast cards. She's kind of limited to the unbound. She can play unbound, but she's better off playing beast decks because you need exceptionally low-cost cards because her hero ability is absolutely dumb. It doesn't make any sense. It's overly complicated. It's RNG heavy, and it's just completely pointless. They need to rework it entirely. I think it's bad. You don't want any form of RNG in a RTS tower defense game. You know what I mean? Like, you want your deck to be consistent. You don't want to smash somebody one game and lose horrifically the other game just because the deck isn't the same all the time. Basically, it makes all the cards in your hand the same cost, but that cost is randomly assorted between the costs of the cards in your deck. So, I mean, there could be a point if you have a 5-drop card in your deck where every card in your hand is a 5-drop, and then it's like, oh, I can't play my 2-drop Quillbore for anything less than 5 mana. And it becomes a literal detriment. It's a crazy, weird card. I'm sure somebody might find a way to make it work. Maybe there's some hidden OP deck that nobody's really quite discovered as of yet. I can't seem to make this card work for the life of me. This is our first dumpster fire hero. I am so sorry if this is one of your favorite cards. Some people, I mean, maybe you swear by it, but I'm telling you, this card is atrocious. As compared to all the other heroes in the game, Charlga is hands down the worst, and I don't feel bad saying that, to be honest. Sorry, I know I'm clicking my screen. I'm just preventing it from going dark on you guys because I'm just sitting here yapping. Mobile struggles. All right, so who do we got next? We got the old Miss Jaina Proudmoore. Sorry, I feel a sneeze coming. There it is. Man, you ever get that feeling where you feel like you have to sneeze, but you can't? It's just, that is the worst. Sorry. We've got Jaina Proudmoore next. She's not dumpster. We're just chucking her in there. She's got really good CC in single target, unfortunately, but she's got that auto attack slow. She only costs 3 to drop, and she makes all of your spells wicked nasty. She increases the level of all of your spells by +3, making all of your spells crazy, crazy strong. She has 2 or 3 like exceptionally strong decks. You got Jaina Unbound deck, like Jaina Spell Cycle Face, which is just phenomenal. I've seen it in the beta hitting 20k trophies pretty easily. It's taking things like Execute and making use of the safe pilot and stuff to face. And then you got Jaina Control, like the Keep the Jaina Alive kind of thing, where you play similarly to Thalnos, but she doesn't quite scale like him. She just boosts your spells, so she's much more expendable. And she's cheap. She's only dropping for 3. She's got really solid single target DPS and you know, in the slow on top of that. She only hits 1 target, which is weird for a mage. Like, I think she should be splash, but with splash damage, this card would be absurd. So I understand why she's single target. She's horrifically annoying to deal with. She's a lot harder to kill than something like Thalnos. Shockingly beefy-ish for a 3-drop. Like, for a 3-drop caster, she's got a reasonable amount of health. She can take like 1 or 2 harpy whacks before she dies. All around, fantastic. Open, deck builds. Lots of ways to play her. Lots of decks, and all of the decks she runs are quite good. She doesn't really make S tier, unfortunately, but we are going to put her in a meta, and we are going to put her ahead of everybody that's in there so far. She's hovering on S tier because she is very capable of that 20,000 trophy mark. Many people have done it in beta and stuff. So, you know, Jaina's one you want to aim for, especially if you like those castery control decks like I do. I'm waiting to get my hands on her myself. Fantastic card. I hate playing against her. Very, very strong. Next up, on the polar opposite of Jaina, I suppose, we've got Maiev Shadowsong. Woo! The card for edgelords. She may look super, super cool, but she costs 6, unless you're playing unbound cards to reduce her cost, but that limits her to playing unbound decks, which are frankly awful. Unbound decks are just troll, low skill nonsense that people play to try and sneak wins against people who aren't very good, or into defensive decks, but it has a miserable win rate. It's got one build. It's just all around terrible troll hero. She has some very bad AoE clear when she comes out as an unbound. And considering how much setup she needs to hit the field, you'd feel she'd be a lot more rewarding. At least that's the way I see it. Maiev and the singular deck that she can play is unfortunately dumpster fire. As cool as the hero looks, unbound deck, I have no respect for it. I think it's atrocious. Unlike the Sneed deck, which is equally troll, at least Sneed has some kind of competitive viability into slower decks like Hogger and stuff. Maiev is just bad. It's just a miserable version of Sneed. And it belongs in dumpster fire. It should just be deleted from the game. Most unbound cards should. So that's I wonder if you can tell what I feel about that card, eh? I dislike unbound decks. A lot of people know that, but it's not getting in the way of my judgment. I'm telling you now, it's just generally not a very good hero, sadly. Next up, another polar opposite from Maiev, we have Tirion Fordring. Tirion Fordring is shockingly only a 4-drop card, considering he's a super tank, he's armored, and he heals everything at a pretty good clip. Like, he heals quite often, he heals for a good amount. His gold value for the card itself, like as just a singular 4-drop, is phenomenal. Really, really, really good card for 4 mana, or 4 gold, sorry. He has possibly one of the strongest slow pushes in the game, with most of the Tirion decks that run double healer. I mean, you're not running Tirion without Warsong, or not Warsong, Frostwolf Shaman. Like, the double heal and Holy Nova kind of thing is in all of his decks, but he is able to build in a lot of different ways. You can play him hybrid with Blackrock Flying even, and it's all about that healing and tankiness. He's just a good card for 4. The only inherent negative to him is his decks get smoked by Sneed because he is a slow playing card and he always runs in slow playing heavy decks. I'm sure there's a way to make him work in a fast deck, but I mean, what's the point? You want him healing tanks, right? Being a pain in the butt. He loses the Sneed and Living Bomb badly, but I mean, that's about all he realistically loses to. He does struggle against Elemental Drakkisath, but who doesn't? That's an S tier deck. And Tirion himself is also deserving of S tier. He, in my opinion, is not as good as Drakkisath. That is just a very consistent, strong build. And Tirion is, even though his builds are just as strong and just as top tier as Drakkisath, his decks are a lot harder to play. Drakkisath just feels clean. Tirion can be smoked by things like Sneed, for example, and it feels bad because Sneed is a low skill deck, and it's like, I'm playing the best I can and I'm losing to these Sneeds. It's like, there's nothing you can do. But it's just a counter to the deck. The deck itself and the numerous decks it plays are top tier. So if you got Tirion, Don't feel bad working on him. He's certainly one of the best in the game, and shockingly, unpopular. Not a lot of people play Tirion decks in the meta right now, so I mean, now's the opportunity to start up a Tirion deck and bully the kids who aren't really aware how to deal with it yet, because for some reason, not a lot of people seem to like Tirion. But that's him. That's Tirion down. Next up, we've got Mr. Old Murk-Eye. Another one of my favorite cards. Don't let that... I'm not going to let it get in the way of my decision by any means. I don't with any of this. This is strictly for your guys' information. And how I feel in the meta that these cards are playing. But we got Old Murk-Eye. He does have some inherent negatives. One of those being that he's forced to play swarm decks. But like Tirion, being forced to play heavy decks, he has a very open build path. You can play a lot of cards in his deck. He's a swarm deck card, but because of the way he works and how summoning after he's put out still spawns Murlocs based on cost, there's nothing inherently wrong with playing not big tanks like the way I like to play it. I like to play Murk-Eye Molten Giant, but there's you don't even have to play it with big cost cards. You can play low cost Swarm Cycle, and you know he's got a very open build. He's a good card. He's got quite a solid amount of deck options. He costs 4. I don't know if I mentioned that yet. He's a 4-drop. And for what he does for your deck, 4 mana is fantastic. Spawning all of those stupid Murlocs all over the map for realistically 4, because you're only paying 4 for them. All the rest of the Murlocs coming out on top of the card you're summoning next is, you know, you're still getting that card. So it's basically 4 mana for infinite Murlocs and him. Really, really good gold value. Through talents as well. He's got some very unique talents. The one I like in particular is the one that CC stuns opponents that the little Murlocs hit. Oh my goodness, so annoying. I've played against a couple of guys who have managed to pull that. I don't have it yet, but oh my god, it's so irritating. You get taunt on that Molten Giant if you're running a Molten Giant to keep, you know, to taunt everything to the Molten Giant, and then you got your little Murlocs stunning the crap out of everything so they can't even do damage to the Molten Giant. It's hilarious. It's a really, really, really good build, and it's unfortunately not able to make it to S tier. It's not quite that level of good, but it is good, and it's going in meta, and it is falling just behind Jaina here and above Baron Rivendare. Fantastic card. You know, if you like those swarm decks, you know, you like seeing 100 things on the field and knowing that your opponent is getting overburdened by your crazy push. Yeah, it's a good feeling to play the deck. It's fun seeing all those cards out smashing. So I do recommend Old Murk-Eye. I try him out. Oh God. Next up, we've got, you know, Ziona's favorite, Sneed. God damn, do I hate this card. He is such a pain. He is a noob stomper. You know, and this deck, it's fast, and when it gets ahead, it stays ahead. It's really hard to deal with when this deck gets ahead because of that ridiculous gold generation he gets from Sneed's passive. And it's all about tower rush and face. Because he plays like that, he's severely, and because of his hero power, he's limited to like 1 build, and that's it. There's like realistically only 1 build with like a couple of little card variations here and there to play on him. So he's quite limited in that sense. He's atrocious in high elo, in my opinion. Once you have a good understanding of how to deal with Sneed, it's very easy to counter. But, as I said earlier, there are some high-tier decks in the game, such as Tirion, you know, such as even Rend Blackhand on occasion, who suffers into Sneed's aggression. He is like unbound level of stupid, annoying, nonsense, toxic troll garbage, but he's actually not that bad. And it's unfortunate. For as much as I hate this card, he is actually slipping into acceptable. Behind Thalnos, he is not as good as the Thalnos cycle deck, but in the meta and a lot of these high-end decks, being able to sneak wins against those high-rated players, as well as stomping a lot of these lower-ranked decks, he slips into acceptable. As much as I'd love to put him in dumpster fire, because he's just toxic, the one thing I will unfortunately have to admit is it's incredibly fun to play. The deck is hilarious. It's really fun to play. It's really fun to just make a mockery of your opponents when it does work. But that's the thing. Sometimes it doesn't. So into acceptable for Sneed. A lot of you guys will be happy about that one. I'm livid that he exists, but such is life. And it looks like we're on to the very last hero here in Rend Blackhand. Rend Blackhand is an extremely expensive card. That is probably one of his most inherent weaknesses. He is a 6-drop card. That's crazy expensive. That's on level of Maiev, but Maiev gets the reduced cost with the unbounds. Rend doesn't have that. Rend has to come out for 6, meaning he is inherently played in heavy decks. That's why he struggles and loses to things like Sneed. But, playing those heavy expensive decks, the decks he does play into have phenomenal map control, good splash damage, good defense, great offense. It's incredibly hard to deal with this card in particular. Not only this card, but the deck that it runs, like the Flying Blackhand with Gargoyle. Gargoyle is hard to deal with on its own. Standard Rend Blackhand deck, even with like a couple of minimal flying units, is still fantastically strong. It's the black, what's it called? The little mountain. I can't think right now. This video is getting a little too long, but the cards in his wheelhouse are pretty fantastic. So, and his decks inherently are fantastic too. So yeah, he's hard to deal with. He's got a lot of open deck builds in terms of like he can switch up the deck a lot based on the player's playstyle. It doesn't build like like as I was saying earlier, decks don't have to build around him. He builds into decks, which is what you want for a hero card. You don't want him to be the forerunner of the show, although he is, but you know what I mean. You don't want him to be mandatory for the deck's success. You can remove him and the deck is good, if that makes sense. When he's on the field, he discounts your flying units. So, in my opinion, Rend Blackhand flyer decks are the best in the meta for him. But he can play with minimal flyers and still do great, similar to Drakkisath. But he's even got some really solid talents in that one that gives you like armor and then elemental resist when he's on the ground. And he's got a lot of different ones, but that are all quite good. Overall, this is a top tier hero card, and he is going to slip into our third S tier, and it's a toss-up for me. He could fit above Tirion or below Tirion. I feel they're kind of tied. In my opinion, I think both of their decks are great at what they do. But yeah, he'll definitely fit into the S tier in the meta. So looking at, the overview, we've got Drakkisath, Tirion, and Rend Blackhand in the S tier. Jaina, Old Murk-Eye, Baron, Rivendare, Hogger in meta, which is very good decks. Under acceptable, decks that can perform, but, maybe take a little bit more skill than the other ones to get to that level is Blood Mage, Thalnos, and sadly, Sneed. Under below average, we've got both of the Horde leaders here. I mean, it's sad to see, but there they are. Cairn, and then below Cairn is Grom Hellscream. And then under Dumpster Fire, you know what? We got to switch that around. There we go. Under Dumpster Fire, both of these decks, in my opinion, you should never run if you want to be competitive in PvP. You've got Maiev Shadowsong and then Charlga, whatever the hell her name is, Razorflank. I always forget. She wasn't really a popular character story-wise for me when I played WoW back in the day, but I know she's from RFT, but yeah. But there's your tier list, everybody. That's it. Sorry I'm doing this on mobile. It makes it a little bit of a pain in the butt. But that's realistically the only way I could get it done. I did want to make a little tier list for you guys to enjoy. So, you know, this is my opinion. I'm not the only high-ranked, high-level player in this game. I'm sure there's people better than me. I'm not that egotistical to think that I'm unbeatable. And my opinions can't be wrong. But, maybe somebody else thinks a couple of my decisions are flawed, but that is what it is. This is how I feel about the state of the current meta as a experienced RTS lane pushing player. And this is what I feel. I hope you guys agree with it. If not, leave a comment and tell me I'm dumb. I don't care. let me know what you think. So here it is, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. It was a bit of a long one today, but thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoy it. Let me know if you want to see more content like this instead of just those deck builds. Of course, I'm still going to do those deck builds. Everybody needs to know what they're doing and the decks to build. But, thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed it. Ziona out, and you guys just keep on rumbling.